Ladies and gentlemen, greetings and hello. I am so glad that you could make it today, and furthermore, I'm glad that I could make it today because I wasn't sure that I could. This is because I just barely moved into my new Playspace, which I thought for certain would be a happy affair. It actually turned out to be a little bit more emotionally laden than I had suspected. So what I'm going to be doing in this video is talking more about the Playspace, what it achieves, and why it's actually a fantastic move. But then I'm going to move into why it feels so conflicted, because it's such a good move, and then I'm going to talk more about what I intend to do about that confliction. A little bit of a loaded video for really just talking about the adjustment of my play space, but that's what we look forward to these days, so let's kind of get to it, and I hope you enjoy. Up first is we gotta tackle some story time, just to lay down some groundwork, and it's time for some story time. So I'm gonna go on for probably like 5 to 10 minutes or so. I'm just kind of guessing on that one. It might be longer. Will not be shorter though. I have way too many words for it to be shorter. But upcoming, we've got story time, just about like the new play space, what went into the decision, and some of it's gonna have to do with like going on dates and stuff like that. So here's story time about the new play space, and then we'll talk more about the emotional weight behind it. And this one's going to be super duper fun, because I was trying to do story time on my other little fun vlog channel now, because the story time portion of it is actually a ton of fun, because it's such good times. I've been blocked doing a lot of VR in the living room, because my roommate comes in and out and is doing like dishes or laundry and just generally living life, and it works fine enough if I can consistently get mornings, which is something that I did do with my new work schedule, but that's getting a little ahead of myself, so we have to save the rest of that for later. Suffice to say that additional privacy is one of the primary factors that brings me into my new play area, which is my bedroom. It's a decent enough place to have VR. There's considerably less physical real estate. I cannot walk around as much as I want to be able to do. But let's face it, when I'm in front of the camera, I'm not really doing all that much walking. Like, I walk within frame, but it was rare that I walked like clear the heck all over the place. So for my primary use of VR, I don't actually need as much space as I had told myself that I did need. What did turn out to be a massive benefit, though, is being able to seamlessly transition out of doing work in VR, which is my video stuff, which is why I wanted all of that play space to begin with, and into social VR. So I can be filming stuff, and then immediately we're gonna go to karaoke, baby, and not even worry if the roommate's doing dishes, or it's like, wow, is Phineas like right in the living room singing Depeche Mode? And that it's not a problem, but when it's in VR, I do actively have to be a little bit like, I'm singing Depeche Mode wearing a funny hat and tons of virtual gear, only to myself, but I'm having a blast and I am in the zone. I am in the future. I am future kitty cat man. But that is a factor that I did have to overcome. I was able to. It's not a big deal, but being able to have the privacy of expression in my room at any time of day honestly has more benefits than I thought that it would. And I just gotta be honest with you, being in my virtual relationship now for the first time, which has been going so fantastic by the way, and I don't want to belabor the point onto this video too much, but it's just, I'm in a VR relationship that's going pretty well. And of course, being able to just casually go on dates or spend some just really close cuddle time together on a whim without, like, being in the living room, like trying to figure out what that's like. It's such a benefit, of course, having ultimate privacy in that way. But even in small ways, like we were watching YouTube in Resonite with some friends and just being casually, just kind of like cuddly. And then I had like an absolute break of moment where it's like I'm sitting in my computer chair in the living room watching YouTube videos, but also like in a really odd, like clearly he's cuddling a virtual person pose. And it just kind of like really took me out of the moment. And it's not like that's anything untoward, but it was just a little bit too breaky for me. And so I figure, like, well, we'll just move into the play space, sacrifice the physical space, which I've always really wanted, and we'll get to that in a moment, in order to spend more personal time and social time, which I never thought that I wanted. So it's interesting seeing my priorities shift in that way. And we're almost done talking about the play space specifically. I just want to highlight what it physically looks like to have VR in my room, and then we'll move forward to more of the emotional heft of the video and what we're doing here in the first place. Because, in order to pull this off, I had to dismantle my bed, stow the box frame in my closet, which meant the things in my closet I had to like find different homes for, and I didn't have the best organization system because I had a whole closet that could just be messy, but now it's got a whole bed like box frame, whatever that is. But then also the headboard and the sideboards and stuff. Like, I just took apart my bed and hid it somewhere else to get as much real estate as possible. My mattress, I now just lay on the floor when it's time to have a mattress on the floor. And then the rest of the time, I put all of my bedding and pillows in the closet and I stack the mattress up against the wall to give myself as much real estate as possible. That's what it looks like to have VR in my room. Longtime watchers of my channels will understand that that's where I began. When I started getting into VR in my old place where I lived, I also, I still had the bed I put up on the wall to get myself my little recording studio in my room. That was where I started. So coming back feels oddly enough like coming home, even though you do have to come to terms with how radically bohemian it is. Then again, I think I am a bit of a bohemian myself, so maybe I really am just in position, even though it looks a little strange. And the reason it feels so strange is because on paper, it doesn't make all of the sense in the world when you take out the social enrichment of the virtual world. Because if I'm looking at my life only from the human perspective, it looks like I'm a human with a living room, which is now quite barren, because my roommate we don't have a big footprint in there, he never did, and my footprint was the only footprint, and now I don't really have much of that either. So where I live physically, there's nothing in the living room, not even a TV, no game consoles. There's just, it's a not a functional room at all. And my bedroom is not a functional room. So when I have friends over, or if I had a guy over, then I don't look like a very well put together human. A well put together human has a living room with pictures on it and television with things that you do or whatever people do in living rooms. I don't know. It's very much the typical the subreddit male living space, I think. I don't know, but everywhere else I go, the living room typically has decorate it looks like a living room. And Lord knows that a bedroom looks like a bedroom. I don't really have a bedroom right now. It's just kind of like my little studio. I sleep in it when I need to. I have VR in it when I need to, which is more of what I do than sleep in it most of the time. It's just the space that I need it to be, but it's extremely atypical for what a normal person would have. Normal person would have a bedroom, so if I have any gentlemen suitors over, and maybe you would have a bedroom for other reasons, but I don't know what those would be, then I would have a bedroom. And if you pick someone up at the bar or on one of the social apps for men, you would just be a more desirable mate if you have a bedroom. That's just a better put together human. And when I first moved here, I wanted to be a put-together human. Because when I moved here, the living room was kind of like a blueprint. An empty blueprint. I could put my own blueprint. It could be whatever. It was a living room of dreams. There was a bookshelf with stuff on it, and that was it. I could do whatever. I had license to do whatever with it. And where I came from, and everywhere I've always lived, I never had the license to customize it and kind of decorate it and turn it into the living space that I would always have wanted a living space to be. And combined with how you decide to arrange your bedroom and put up posters and whatever the things are, how you decorate and the things you choose to display, does a lot to inform the sort of person you are, especially because we live in the world where unfortunately the best ways to present yourself are through the things that you purchase. It's just kind of a lame world we live in, but that is how it goes. And I really wanted to be the sort of person who carries themselves in that sort of a way. The living room was clearly a testament to they do a lot of virtual reality work, and this is a man who's got a studio, he's got your big computer set up, and it was just clearly for a purpose, and I did kind of like that aesthetic. And the bedroom was pretty much just the room that had a bed in it, a handful of small other things, and decorations, but I never quite put them all together, because I never really quite ended up having over gentlemen callers, and I've never really been one to invite friends over. I've never really been one to have friends. It just wasn't something that I ended up putting a lot of emphasis on, even though it was the picture of a person I wanted to be when I first moved here, and that was about 5 months ago or so. We are now beginning to get to the rest of the video and what I wanted to talk about today so desperately. I'm just going to wrap up the Playspace thing, just a cap of what we have so far so we can move forward in absolute certainty of where we've been. I began my VR journey in a tiny quadrant of a bedroom, realized it means enough to me that I'm going to dismantle my bed in my old place where I lived, so I could turn it into the same mattress on floor when I need to sleep, and when not, I have a bigger room to VR in. For about 2 months, then I did move into a different room that had considerably more space. It was a converted garage, so like a half of a conversion or whatever. So there was a lot of space for VR, and I became addicted to real estate. When I moved where I am now, I had the opportunity to have a full bedroom and an even larger dedicated play space. I ate up that opportunity. I was so excited for that opportunity, and it came with 2 spaces that I could customize to be able to express myself in freedom that I hadn't quite had before. And now, today, right now, this is the first filming session, the first video on this channel, the first time in my new play space, which looks like an absolute reversion. Bed dismantled, mattress on the floor, not as much footprint or play space. That feels like a massive step backwards, and yet it feels more like a return to form than ever before. Now it's time to move on to the emotional weight of the video. Let's talk about what we're here to talk about. But first up, this video was pretty long, and I was getting pretty bored during filming it, and I wanted to take a little dance break to give myself a rest from the rest of this video, and I decided to keep this in for reasons I don't even understand, but this was me dancing in the middle of the filming session before I could go on because I got bored. First, there are 2 immediate emotional elements which, if left unexamined, could cause confliction to the new system and help explain why I'm so agitated when it comes to trying to talk plainly about my new play space. I have a lot of feelings about it, and here's 2 base reasons why, even though neither one of them really apply in a meaningful way. First, it feels like a downgrade. I came from this space, I found my way into kind of a dream setup. Successful human, has a bedroom, has a VR space, lots of real estate for walking around in and filming videos. It seemed like I had moved up, and so coming back down to having just everything in one room feels like a step backwards. On paper, if you leave the situation unexamined, it kind of is. A second element to the change that I've made here is to better facilitate being able to go on dates and hang out with my boyfriend in more casual, more consistent ways without worrying about my roommate coming in or out, or waiting until it's late enough or early enough that I have the place to myself, and working around schedules and things like that. So it could look like, from an emotional viewpoint, if I left that emotional viewpoint unexamined, that I made such a big change in my life, moved backwards in status so that I could spend more time with a boy. If that's where that logic ended, and the logic does not end there, but it could end there if you did not fully examine yourself and your emotion states. You could come to the faulty conclusion that I stepped backwards in my creative endeavors specifically to spend time with a boy, and that could be in confliction to what I've always wanted to do with my life and everything that got me to this point in the first place for the sake of a relationship, and that could cause turmoil if you did not finish thinking through the system. Absolute disclaimer, that is not how I emotionally feel whatsoever. It is a factor to why I moved play spaces. It is not the factor. It's not the biggest factor. It's just kind of like, yes, of course I want to spend more casual time with my boyfriend with 2 base stations that I don't have to move all over, and I can have my full body tracking instead of using 6-point tracking using my laptop that I have to move dongles back and forth with for like when we go on dates, and I just want to have privacy. And so now I have full tracking with the proper system that doesn't lag as much. Like, this was just so much better for my personal social life, not even just with my boyfriend. It's not for, like I described, if I was in a negative mental space, that is what one such take on the current transition could look like. That is not what's happening. I need to be abundantly clear. What I just said does not actively apply, but it could as a negative theoretical, which I think could be a natural way to accept the state of things. That was one heck of a disclaimer, but now let's get back to it. Because I did just now describe 2 fairly distinct elements which do pertain to the shift of my VR Playspace, which are to some extent adequate representations, like those are factors that are kind of at play, so I'm not wrong when I bring those things up. But there is something so much more important at play here, which is why it's very important to examine emotional situations more fully. Because if I settled on either one of those two arguments, I have an incomplete picture of the situation. My picture is still incomplete, but there is a far more grand driver here which actually agitates me, and that's the thing I think I want to work on, not the other stuff that I brought up. Even though those are accurate, the thing I'm about to say is far more accurate, more base, like it applies to more of me. It's something bigger that I'm grappling with because I just think it's a bigger idea. And I lighted on it earlier. I just kind of brushed through it and you might not have noticed it. But when I moved here, there was a vision of a person I wanted to be. Focus on that. I wanted to be the guy who has the living room not unlike the living rooms that I've seen. You have a TV, maybe a game console. I had my desk set up, and sometimes desks go in the living room, and we hadn't had a table yet, but we didn't really need one because I was doing VR, but you could see that there was base stations, and then I do have my piano in the front room still. But then you've got someone who's artistic with the piano, clearly into VR and gadgetry, which I absolutely am. These were things that I was able to display of myself, and I was trying to be a person who had that kind of element of self on display. And interestingly enough, I wanted to be the kind of guy who had a bedroom. And in a strange way, that's more valid than it seems, because I've never totally had one, because I've been in a lot of poor relationships where I've shared a bedroom, but never had a lot of design input to that space, because I also have about a 32-year history of being just an absolute doormat and a people pleaser. And before I was in relationships, I had too small of a personality to even be able to fill a bedroom. I thought that now was going to be my first opportunity to do so, and I really wanted a bedroom. Some of that, admittedly, was so that I could have gentlemen callers over in full conscience, because I would have a bedroom to come back to, and of course that sounds like a wonderful image. I just never ended up being comfortable enough to have just randos over, and when I did go out, I would usually go out to their place, because that's just what I was used to, that's what I was comfortable with. I never ended up having gentlemen callers over, or going on dates seriously enough. Like, I've only had one real-life friend over, even, but I wanted the ability to be able to have them over in good conscience, because that was a person I wanted to be. I wanted to have a living room that was well put together and displayed who I was, and a bedroom which also displayed who I was. I'm going to give two quick arguments here. I never purchased a bookshelf, so I never had a way to display as many of my furry paraphernalias and my books or my silicone sculptures to an adequate degree. If I wanted to set up my spaces with more intentionality, I would have absolutely gotten that bookshelf so I could display myself in the way that I wanted to be. And in a related way, I never set up the spaces to properly display in the way I wanted to, but I never brought anybody over in the first place to be able to show them who I was by virtue of the places I had set up. I did have one real-life friend over, and I've had him over a few times, but that was more of to do VR together, which we both enjoy, but also as an expression of, like, I want to trust this person as a friend and bring them into my life and who I am, including displaying myself as relatively unfinished, a room that's not all the way put together, because as it turns out, I'm a person who's either just not all the way put together, or a person who is put together, but in ways that are not societally what it typically looks like, or I'm a person who's not put together and is okay with that, and therefore is a little bit put together. And I have known for quite some time, actually, that I had held in mind a vision of who I wanted to be. I also knew that I was not taking the steps to become that vision of myself, i.e., finishing setting up my rooms and having decorations or having boys over like I always imagined having over. I never took those steps. but I was still holding on so tightly to the idea of it that I had my VR in the room that was less private because I wanted all of the real estate space and I wanted a bedroom that was fully assembled, but I never really properly utilized either one of those systems. Never had boys over, never really decorated either of the spaces, and wasn't able to lean into VR to the extent I know I need to and will because I had to share the space and work around a common schedule so I could feel like I had privacy and film without dishes going on. And also, it's just hard to express yourself openly and honestly, and I can do that better in my bedroom than I can in the living room. I think that makes sense. But changing up my play space was not a step I wanted to take at all, let alone one that I was able to take lightly. Because now that I accept that doing VR in my bedroom, in just that ultimate private space where I can be myself with every right and do the things which are important to me, I have to acknowledge that where I was is not as important to me. When I let go of wanting the bigger play space and wanting a separate room and wanting to be a certain type of person, I recognize that who I'm becoming and the steps I've taken now are what's more important to me. I always have a hard time with that because instead of being excited about the new zone and the new possibilities and being able to film loosey-goosey and spend social time in a seamless way and spend more time as a cat, which is where so much of my fulfillment really is, I recognize that I spent 5 months trying to be something different. And I will admit to you, it is a slight difference. I'm still a VR boy. I still live a real world life. Clearly, I'm still a human person on the inside of this. But in a way, it doesn't feel like the sort of life I would have crafted if I was in charge of crafting my own life. I need to qualify that because it's condemning and also not correct. And I need to explain what I just said. I have, for the past 5 months, been holding on to the image of the person I would like to craft, and the life I wanted to live, have a bedroom, have a living room, display who I am, have people over. That sounds like an excellent life on paper. That's what I was telling myself I wanted to create. Something clearly breaks when, for 5 months, I had just been focusing on VR work and I hadn't been doing all of the other things that would have stepped towards the life I had told myself I wanted. So clearly there's something going on there, but I haven't examined that because it's inconvenient. And I've wanted to live the virtual life and really throw into my hobbies and the expressions of self as I've learned to do them, but I haven't wanted to let go of the life that I once wanted to have. For a very long time, I was able to live these two half lives. It worked out great. Not a problem, not a big deal. I had a living room and a bedroom, even if they weren't, as assembled as they might have been if I was someone different. I did have those things. And I also had my VR ambitions and a schedule that worked out well enough for them. And I learned how to film with enough alacrity that in a small span of time, when I have the place to myself, I can film as much as I need to. It comes out how it needs to. And I was really happy with everything that I did have because I had enough of both worlds. I come to realize now, and granted, my relationship helps me realize it much more easily than I would have otherwise, that I would so much rather lean all of the way in to the things that clearly mean more to me than trying to live these two half lives. If this sounds dramatic, I don't really think that it is. Because something I've told myself I wanted for so long was to be a complete and intact person. To have the sorts of living rooms I see everyone else have, and to have a well put together bedroom like I see everyone else have. And in a way, I wanted so desperately to be like everyone else. Nobody I know has the bedroom situation that I do. I don't know what that means. No one has a mattress that they put up on the wall to give themselves as much studio space as possible to be able to do VR in their room with as much privacy so that they can be who they are and film and work on their ambitions and dreams as fervently as possible. I'm the only person who takes those steps or whose steps to take looks the way that they do. I feel kind of embarrassed about that, kind of ashamed, but I think more than anything, I feel really lonely about it. Some of living these two half lives, I think, is trying not to feel like the only one. I have a VR space in the living room, which is a normal thing to do, and a bedroom, which is normal, but I do so much video work as a virtual kitty cat, which is not normal. And because I've spent so much more time as the virtual cat, and that's what I love doing, and I spent such little time thinking critically about my physical spaces, clearly it's more important for me to focus on VR and to be the cat. These are the things that I love doing. Having my room in such an odd little space to facilitate that, that's an expression and an acceptance of me. And I typically do not accept me. I make mistakes and bad decisions all of the time. So I never lean in to the things that are in my heart to a fullness because I don't always have confidence in myself that it's going to go well or that it's going to be the right decision. No one else is doing what I'm doing. So the more I lean into it, the more uncertain I become. And I don't always have the confidence in myself that I'm going to be able to pull it off. Because up until today, really, today, I would have been able to say, I have a living room and a bedroom, and I do VR stuff as my hobby. And if it doesn't work out or whatever, like it's my foot, and it's not like it couldn't not work out. Like my relationship's not going anywhere, my video work's not going anywhere. But I could always fall back to being a somewhat put together human, a human who's trying, instead of what I think that I am. Because when I drop my insecurity and all of my bull crap, I want to try and be family friendly a little bit. But when I drop all of those things that aren't actually me, because you can have an identity as someone insecure, but to be secure in myself is to accept that I love having a bohemian room. Weird things everywhere, mattress on the wall. This is not a normal thing to do, and I am not normal. And today, I started to not even pretend that I am. I started today wanting to make a couple of videos, some for this channel, some for the other channel, and stock up for like the weekend so I can work on like other stuff. And the first video on my docket was going to be talking about my new Playspace. I couldn't pull it off because there was too much odd confliction there and emotional energy that I was not able to unpack. I described earlier what some of those were, some of the uninspired elements that don't actually hold up to scrutiny. And some of what I think is really going on when I was having a hard time expressing my feelings about moving into my new space is because accepting my new space looks like accepting me, which looks like I have to own up to the fact that I've been trying to be something that I'm just not. I do not care about the living room, or the bedroom, or how the human presents himself, or being the only one I know who does things the way that I do, because I'm the only one who believes as firmly as I do in what I do to take the steps required, and that these are the steps that looks like. I don't know what any of that means, and right now it feels really lonely. Because I've always been a little bit like the other humans. I do VR work as my hobby, but I've been kind of like the other humans. And now I'm just even more like myself than ever before, which looks a little bit less like the other humans I see. Any of the other humans I see. And I love accepting who I am. It's kind of neat. But I don't love acknowledging how long I've spent trying to be something other than me. That's going to take time to work through, and I wanted to make a video where I'm talking about all of these systems that are at play, and naming the problem and acknowledging what's going on always makes something easier to handle, and small elements of emotionality that feel like the problem. Maybe I gave up my ambitions creatively just for a relationship. Or maybe I'm stepping backwards to where I was in the past, and now I'm no longer, I'm back to my bedroom with a mattress that's hangs on the wall, and that's a step backwards. I stepped backwards. And examining those things further to realize that there's just something bigger at play. Something that's hard to grapple with, and I think the only thing you can do is acknowledge it's there and continue your life anyway. What I have just barely described to you is uncomfortable to do, it's challenging to pull off, it sucks. Because as I move forward with my life now, for a while, I'm going to be holding in mind the life that I never ended up living that I told myself for so long I really wanted. But also, I'm really happy with the decision that I've made to take what looks like a step back, because actually it's just a step which allows me to be who I am. And I'm very excited for what that looks like. It's already looked pretty good, and I can't wait to see what comes next. This video was a little bit of a chonker, I think, but we love it for it. You love a good chonker, and we had one for you today. Thanks for hanging out with me while I expressed some of what's going on in my new Playspace. I look forward to what's coming up next. I hope that you are too, and I hope that you're doing okay. Thanks for watching, everyone.